Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hereby call the December 3rd, 2018 special town meeting of the town of Acton to order. We still have a few folks coming in, but there is no line waiting outside to check in, so I believe it's appropriate to get started. My name is Peter Ashton. I am the town moderator, and I welcome you to this special town meeting. We do have some folks going into the overflow room in the gym, so they will also be able to see and hear what we are doing, and when they are talking, you'll be able to hear what they have to say. This evening, we have 4 articles to consider. They may all be considered a package, that is, they are interconnected, and therefore the vote on one affects the action that may be considered on subsequent articles. So I encourage everyone to stay here for the duration. Hopefully it will not be too long. The Selectmen's presentation on Article 1 will explain this process in greater detail, and I am sure with greater clarity than I could. We're expecting a large crowd, and we've tried to be prepared. That's why we have the auditorium and the upper gym available. The assistant town moderator, who was voted in last April, is Joanne Barry, and she will be presiding in the gym. I will explain how the debate will progress between the 2 rooms when we get to the debate portion of Article 1. Given the large crowd and use of 2 rooms, we will be using electronic voting to count all the votes. I will explain that process, and we'll do a couple of practice votes to make sure people are familiar with the process and that the system is working appropriately in a few minutes. First of all, how many of you are here for your first town meeting? Please raise your hands. It's a very large group. Welcome. Thank you for coming. I hope you, yes, thank you. I hope you will find this an interesting and rewarding experience and come to many, many more town meetings. Let me explain just a few of the rules and procedures before we begin. Please ensure that all cell phones are silenced. Let me make sure mine is. It wasn't. Computers and other electronic devices are allowed as long as they're on silent. Wi-Fi information was provided on the screen as you see before you. My job as moderator is to preside over town meeting and to make sure that town meeting is fair, open, and civil. Civility is not an option. I expect that everyone will be listened to in a respectful fashion, and speakers are expected to direct their comments to me, the moderator, and not to individuals. While we may disagree, let's not be disagreeable with one another. Furthermore, one part of being civil is that there is no applause or booing during debate. On my part, I will do my best to exercise good faith, and I intend my actions to be reasonable and fair. Parliamentary procedure at town meeting is governed by Mass General Law, Town Meeting Time, a book that only moderators read. It is a handbook of parliamentary processes prepared by the Mass Moderators Association, as well as our town charter, bylaws, and past practice. Many of these rules and procedures are explained in the warrant, and more detail is provided on the town website. Additional information, including the PowerPoint presentations, was made available on the website at the end of last week to also help you, town meeting members, to prepare for the meeting. To ensure an efficient town meeting, it is incumbent on the presenters to make succinct, on-point, and clear presentations. It is also important that you, the voters, be prepared as well. You all should have a copy of the warrant, which is the agenda for town meeting, but what we actually vote on are motions. It is important, therefore, that you listen to and read the motion as it will be shown on the screen. At the pre-town meeting last Thursday evening, presenters generally indicated they would take 5 minutes or less in giving their presentations. Recommendations by the Board of Selectmen and FinCom are generally limited to 2 minutes, although I have granted the Finance Committee extra time for its comments on Article 1. Please keep your comments limited to no more than 2 minutes during the debate. This is important in order to keep the debate on point, to ensure fairness to all and to keep the meeting moving at an efficient pace. Timers that you see down here will aid everyone in knowing when the time has elapsed, and they should be visible to all. It is also appropriate for citizens to call the question when there has been ample opportunity for all points of view to be heard and when comments begin to become repetitious. I also think it's important for you to know who else is sitting up here on stage. Katie Green is chair of the Board of Selectmen. Katie, would you introduce the folks at the two tables here on my right?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Katie Green, chair of the board. To my right is Joan Gardner, the vice chair of the board. Next to her is John Benson, our clerk, Peter Berry, and finally Janet Adachi. And then at the table behind us is our town manager, John Mangiarotti, from town council's office, Nina Pickering-Cook, and our town clerk, Eva Skradek.
Thank you, Katie. Jason Cole is chair of the Finance Committee over here at the table on my left. Would you introduce the members of the Finance Committee, please?
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. Moving as progressively to my left, and only in proximity and not necessarily in political stance. This year's vice chair is Roland Borden. Next to him is Mike Majors. Next is Christine Russell. Then Sahana Peruit, who is this year's associate member. Christy Anderson is this year's clerk. Jeff Burgart, Tom Farley, and Steve Noon.
Thank you, Jason. I would also note that there are various members of town staff are here. My understanding is that questions could arise this evening that only staff can answer, and some of them do not live in Acton. Although it is in my power to allow non-residents to speak, it has been customary in Acton to have town meeting vote to allow them to speak. I would ask the town meeting now vote to allow any town staff member who is not a resident be allowed to speak at this special town meeting. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Ms. Berry, are there people in the gymnasium at this point?
There are people in the gymnasium, and they voted aye.
Excellent. Thank you all. One other point before we turn to electronic voting. I know many of you have asked in the last several days about babysitting at town meeting and why there is none this time. Babysitting at town meeting is actually relatively new. It has been available, to my recollection, less than 10 years, and it has always been a joint PTO activity with permission from the schools to use the space. This year, no one has stepped forward to volunteer to organize and run this service, which is why we don't have it. This service requires significant thought and planning, and if there is anyone that would like to take responsibility for doing this, they are welcome to contact the school's PTO chairperson or the superintendent's office if they are not a school parent, and we would certainly appreciate it. Okay, let's turn to electronic voting. When you checked in this evening, you should have received a clicker, something like this. It is battery powered, has an orange on-off button, and several numbered keys, A through E, and a display, except for those who may have ones with Braille labels. We will only be using two keys to vote this evening. The A key up the top for a yes vote, and the E key at the bottom signifies a no vote. Because these systems are used for a multitude of purposes, we've not been able to find ones with only two buttons. We also have two separate systems. We have one system here in the auditorium and a separate system which I understand runs on a separate frequency in the gymnasium. A few rules. As much as you might like it, you can't take the clicker with you, but you'll have to turn it in at the end of the evening. The clickers are pre-programmed and tested by our IT staff to ensure proper operation. You may have seen on the website a picture of them testing last week. You should keep the clicker with you in the auditorium and the gym at all times and only turn it on when so instructed to save battery life. If you need to leave the auditorium during the meeting, for example, to use the bathroom, you must bring the clicker with you and have it checked at the door. When you will be given a card that you turn back in when you return, and you will get your clicker. To protect the integrity of the voting, you will not be allowed to leave the auditorium unless you turn in your clicker. Basically, we don't want you leaving it behind and having someone else voting for you. When we are ready to vote on a motion, the motion slide will be put up on the screen, the timers will be set to 20 seconds, and I will instruct voters to press gently the orange power button to turn on their clickers. Given the size of the crowd here in the auditorium, we will actually divide the voting into 3 segments. As you can see, most of you know the auditorium is essentially divided into 3 sections, one on what is my right, one in the center, and one on the left, and so each of those sections will vote consecutively. And then we will have the assistant, Madam Moderator, Ms. Berry, do the same in the gym, depending on how many folks are there. When you've turned on your clicker, the word ready will appear in the display indicating power is on. I will ask if everyone has their clickers on. If there are difficulties, raise your hand, and we will have tellers as well as IT staff available to help you. Once everyone has their clickers on and are ready to go, I will state that we're about ready to open the voting window. The timers will be visible, and voters will have 20 seconds to cast their votes. The system records the last button you press within the 20-second voting window, so you can change your vote while the window is open. You press A for yes and E for no. If you do not wish to vote, simply do nothing. And also do not press the send button. The clicker will confirm your vote either by vibrating for the Braille clicker, or the display will show the letter you pressed along with a check mark, indicating your vote has been received. If you decide to abstain after casting either a yay or nay vote, simply push one of the other B, C, or D buttons to cancel your vote. We only record the A and E votes. At the end of the 20-second voting window for each group, I will announce that the voting window is closed. We'll move to the gym and follow the same procedure. The votes will be tallied by the IT staff and will appear on the screen when completed so everyone can see the result. I will still be required by law to declare the result of the vote. Hopefully this process will run smoothly, but let's do a couple of practice votes so everyone gets comfortable with the process. So we have a strictly hypothetical motion. Maybe not so hypothetical, some people might wish. But we will get started. We will do this vote first, obviously, in the auditorium, and then I will turn it over to Ms. Berry in the gymnasium. So please turn your clickers on by pushing the orange button. Has everyone done so? Everything sees that they have power? You have the power of the vote. I will now declare that the voting window is now open for the folks on my right-hand side, this right-hand section, both on the floor and above. So we have 20 seconds. Please start the timer. The voting window is now closed. We'll move to the center section. And those in the center section may now vote. I'm sorry, is there a problem? We have a problem. Okay, we'll get the IT folks to see what's happening. Okay, are we all set? We have those problems fixed? One more? Okay. Okay, we'll move to the center section. I think we'll probably just set it at, I mean, normally we'll do 20, but just to speed this along, we'll do 10 seconds for the center section. So the voting window, you all voted. You're not supposed to vote until I tell you to vote. Let me explain why we do it this way, okay? Last year at this virtually the same date, we had, again, a full auditorium. We tried to vote everyone at the same time in this room, and it overloaded the system. So therefore, we're trying to do it sequentially, section by section, so we don't overload the system. So I would appreciate it if you wait and vote when I ask you to. Thank you. Okay. Everyone in the middle says they voted, so we'll move to the right-hand section. If you haven't voted in the center, you can vote with the folks in the right-hand section. How's that? Okay, I declare the voting window open. We have a couple problems down here. For the whole thing. One clicker, one vote.
Even though they're separate windows.
I will. Yeah. Okay. I'm told if you got an error message, a message that says error, just hit your power button again, and that should fix the problem. I will also let you all know, because there may be some concern where we're breaking the vote up into 3 sections. It does not do you any good to try to vote 3 times. Your vote will only be recorded once. Are we all set?
Most of the errors we're seeing is because they're holding the power button down and mashing it really hard.
Okay.
In the frequency set mode.
Okay.
I've got some spares on the way.
I'm also told that when you press the orange power button, just do it gently. The problems we're getting is because you're pressing it too hard. When you want to vote and exercise that right, you can press that as hard as you want, but the power button, please be gentle. I will now turn it over to the Madam Assistant Moderator in the gym, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We did already vote while, since we have enough to do it in one sweep. We're not over, we have plenty of people, but not the IT folks told us we could do it in one, and we did during, while you guys were voting, and that has been completed.
Very good, then we will tally the vote. And there we have the result. We have a lot of Patriots fans here tonight.
Nay votes were covered by the...
Declare the vote 74% think the Patriots will make the Super Bowl, 26% say no. Given that we had a few glitches there, I think it's worth trying to quickly do one more quick practice vote. So we'll put the second motion up there. Okay. Everyone have their clickers on. I will ask that those in the what I call the right-hand section, please vote. I'll set the voting window at 10 seconds. We have the timer, please. The voting window's now open. Voting window is closed. We'll now move to the center section. The voting window is now open. Have the timer go, please. There we go.
Yeah, A is yes, E is no, and you should see a check mark once you choose your selection.
The voting window is now closed in the center section, and now the left-hand section. Voting window is open.
Voting is closed here.
And it is closed here. I have a feeling I know the result of this vote. But we will wait, because it's always good to let our staff have a little practice tallying as well. Not quite. See, that's why we did it a second time. Okay, very good. Let's move on to Article 1. And we shall put the motion for Article 1 up on the screen. This is a very creative motion. Ms. Green moves that the town amend the general bylaws as set forth in the article. Do I hear a second? The motion has been made and seconded. Before I turn this over to you, Ms. Green, let me explain to town meeting members how we're going to proceed on this motion. The selectmen have opted to make no recommendation on this article, which is, I would say, somewhat unusual. However, as I mentioned before, all four of these articles are somewhat interrelated. So I think it is important for Ms. Green to provide something of a roadmap of the actions that may be taken on each article depending on the outcome of each article, as well as explain the selectmen's position. I also feel it's important that you hear from the groups who are both in favor of and are against this article. Therefore, I am permitting Ms. Green to go first, followed by a presentation of a group in favor of Article 1, and then by one of those opposed to Article 1. I will have Ms. Green stay down here by the microphone, but I will ask the two presenters, after they have each finished their presentation, to return to their seats. If a question is asked that I deem can only be answered by one of those two presenters, I will ask them to go to a mic and give a brief answer. But I do not wish for them to stay down here in the well during the course of the debate. Okay, Ms. Green, you may proceed.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, everybody. As the moderator mentioned, tonight we will take up 4 articles related to recreational marijuana. As the motions on successive articles may vary depending on the outcome of each article, I'm going to start by providing an overview of tonight's voting procedure. This will just be a quick overview of the voting process, and we will discuss the details of each article as we take them up. I would also like to take this time to encourage everyone to stay for all votes tonight. As these articles are related to the same issue, it is important to participate in all of them if you can. Now to the voting procedure. First, we will take up Article 1. This article mirrors the question on the local ballot in the November election and would prohibit any recreational marijuana establishment from operating in Acton. If Article 1 passes, we will move to take no action on Articles 2 and 3. These articles deal with zoning and taxing recreational marijuana establishments. If Article 1 passes, prohibiting the operation of these establishments in Acton, then we believe these articles are moot. We will then move to take a vote on Article 4. This article extends the town's current moratorium on recreational marijuana establishments through June 2019, or until either the Attorney General approves the general bylaw ban passed by Article 1, or the town adopts zoning regulations for recreational marijuana establishments. The town's current moratorium expires on December 31st of this year. If we pass Article 1, the general bylaw ban would not go into effect until the Attorney General's office reviews and approves the bylaw. This may or may not happen by December 31st, so this extension would provide additional time for that review. If Article 1 fails, then we will take up Article 2. This article is related to establishing zoning for recreational marijuana establishments if the town does not adopt the ban under Article 1. If Article 2 passes, then we will take up Article 3, related to adopting an excise tax on retail sales of marijuana. And we will then move to take no action on Article 4. Unlike general bylaws, the zoning bylaw we adopted under Article 2 in this scenario takes effect immediately, so we do not need to extend the moratorium. However, if Article 2 fails, then we will still vote on Article 3, the excise tax, but we will also vote on Article 4, the moratorium extension. In this final scenario, both the prohibition on recreational marijuana establishments and the zoning bylaw have failed. So the moratorium would allow us time to revamp the zoning regulations and come back to a future town meeting for a vote. While this may seem confusing now, hopefully it will make more sense as we go through the motions tonight. And now back to Article 1. As I mentioned earlier, Article 1 mirrors the question on the local ballot at the November election. In 2016, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the voters of Acton voted in favor of Question 4, entitled Legalization, Regulation, and Taxation of Marijuana. The legislature subsequently adopted a general law, which in part required towns where a majority of ballots were cast in favor of Question 4 and that want to limit the type or number of marijuana establishments or prohibit them altogether to submit such prohibitions to voters for approval in a two-step process, being approved at both a local election and a town meeting. On November 6th of this year, the voters of Acton voted by a narrow margin of 5,552 to 5,477 in favor of adopting a general bylaw prohibiting the operation of all recreational marijuana facilities in Acton. That was the first step in the two-step process. The second step is voting on Article 1 tonight. A vote in favor of Article 1 would approve a general bylaw prohibiting any marijuana establishment, including marijuana cultivators, independent testing laboratories, marijuana product manufacturers, and marijuana retailers from operating in Acton. This bylaw would not apply to registered marijuana dispensaries that dispense only medical marijuana. A no vote on Article 1 disapproves the bylaw, meaning the prohibition would not take effect. The Board of Selectmen is split on its opinion of this bylaw, but wanted to put the question before the voters of Acton, hence the November ballot question and this special town meeting tonight. Due to our split, the board felt more comfortable not weighing in on the article and therefore makes no recommendation on Article 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. We will now hear from Dr. Rodman. It is my understanding that you are presenting the position in favor of Article 1. I would ask that, point of order? Should we not hear from the FinCom first? No, we will hear from the FinCom after we've heard the pro and con presentations. We will definitely hear from the FinCom. Would you just please introduce yourself to the town meeting members, and then you may proceed. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Dave Rodman, and I represent Acton Cares, a group of concerned citizens who recommend voting in favor of Article 1. I'm a retired physician. I practiced intensive care medicine for 25 years. I've lived in the area for 9 of the past 12 years, and I'm currently over on Strawberry Hill Road. The other 3 years I lived in a small town like Acton, outside of Boulder, Colorado, during the time when there was implementation of recreational marijuana sales. Based on my experience, I strongly recommend that we don't let this genie out of the bottle right now. This is not a moral judgment, nor is it a not in my backyard opinion. It's simply recognition that none of us has a crystal ball. And to paraphrase Governor Hickenlooper of Colorado, once this genie is out of the bottle, it's very difficult to put it back in again. We don't need to allow sales of recreational marijuana right away. And as I will show over the next few minutes, local sales could have real and negative local costs and effects. In the next few minutes, I'll present 4 reasons to consider a vote for Article 1 and against local sale of recreational marijuana in Acton. Statewide legalization will increase social and financial cost. And make no mistake, legalized recreational marijuana sales will not reduce illegal and underage access and use. It did not in Colorado, and it will not in Acton. The black market will continue to thrive. Some well-meaning people have suggested that we should get our slice of the tax pie now so that we can afford to offset these costs to Acton of just legalization. Our position is there is no free lunch. What might look like a tax windfall today is likely to be a devil's bargain. We will receive some tax revenue, but at what cost? Here are some of the social costs of legalization. As I will show in the next few slides, we will very likely also be inviting large numbers of heavy marijuana users to visit our town and drive on our roads. When we presented this information to our dedicated chief of police, he agreed that should it be the case that we attract many heavy marijuana users to our town on a daily basis, it is more likely than not that we would experience an increase in crimes like burglary, robbery, and automobile accidents, as was the case in Colorado. How about revenue? The Massachusetts Department of Public Health projected that small suburban communities would, on average, generate tax revenues of about $72,000 per year. Wellspring provided projected tax revenue between $314,000 and $524,000 per year. Now, as you consider what appears to be a potential windfall of increased tax revenue that Acton could really put to good use, I encourage you to pay careful attention to this next slide. This slide summarizes the tax revenues suggested by Wellspring's projections in the green box and the potential social impact of recreational sales in Acton in the red box. It's also worth remembering that there's no guarantee that the state will approve the full 3% impact fee for the full 5 years. And in any event, once that expires, the tax revenue will drop in half. Now take a look at the projections from Wellspring, and we agree with these numbers at the bottom. 150 to 250 customers per day, every day, 360 days per year, will need to visit Acton and make purchases. Those are Wellspring's numbers, and we agree with them. Now, who are these customers? Some of them will be people right here in this audience, friends and neighbors. But what the Wellspring numbers don't show you, but this table does, is that each of these purchases is enough to make 40 marijuana cigarettes, 40 joints of extremely potent marijuana, each purchase. Most of these customers will be very heavy marijuana users. That was also the finding of the Massachusetts Department of Health. Do we really want to invite these people to our town right now? Let's also remember that if Article 1 is voted down tonight, one of the zoning articles must pass with a 2/3 majority. Otherwise, shops could be located in virtually any commercial location. We won't know how those votes go until after we've already voted to let the genie out of the bottle. I'd also like to remind you of one last thing. Recreational marijuana is a cash-only business, with tens of thousands of dollars collected each day in these shops. In Colorado, that translated into each shop having armed private security patrolling the premises to protect the shop from becoming an easy target for armed robbers. So in closing, I'd like to emphasize that while many of the topics for discussion focus on the potential gain or loss of revenue, I'd also encourage us to focus equally on just who we are and what we want living in Acton to represent for ourselves, for our neighbors, and most importantly, for our children. Please vote in favor of Article 1 and Article 4 and against allowing recreational marijuana sales in Acton at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Rodman. I will now recognize Ms. Trustoff. She is presenting an argument and position against Article 1. Again, if you would introduce yourself to town meeting members.
Hi.
And then you may proceed.
Sorry, thanks, Peter. Astrid Trostorf, 15 Mohegan Road. I am not with any organization. I'm speaking as an individual. 2 years ago, adult use or recreational cannabis was legalized by the majority of the voters in Massachusetts and Acton. Tonight, we will decide whether Acton will allow an adult use cannabis store to operate within our borders. If this proposed ban, Article 1, is voted down, the one adult use cannabis shop allowed in Acton will likely be located on Route 62. Oh, how do I click this?
Should be a clicker right there. Yep.
There we go. Will likely be located on Route 62, a state highway that runs for less than a mile through the southernmost corner of Acton, near the Concord, Sudbury, Maynard town lines, where Mass Wellspring is already open for business as a designated medical cannabis dispensary. I understand that many fear that allowing an adult use cannabis shop to open in Acton will increase children's access to the drug. I raised 3 children in Acton, and I tried to protect them from risky behaviors, including smoking marijuana. I also know that young people have been buying and using street weed in Acton since before it was legal anywhere in the U.S. But no child will get the drug in a licensed store. In fact, anyone under 21 years old won't even be able to enter one because a government-issued ID, such as a passport or driver's license, is always checked in the anteroom. The security person would reject any questionable ID because the dispensary would not want to put its license and business at risk, just as stores and restaurants check the ID of patrons before selling or serving alcoholic beverages. I also know that many of us have been raised to believe that cannabis is more dangerous and addictive than legal substances like alcohol or tobacco. There are multitudes of studies, scientific and anecdotal, that contradict each other. But since the law has changed, it is pointless for us to debate the moral, safety, or health issues around cannabis use here tonight. The reality is that adult use of cannabis is now legal in Massachusetts, and adults in Acton and surrounding towns can and will legally use it, and they will buy it at whatever store is convenient to them. Personally, I have selfish reasons for wanting Acton to allow an adult-use cannabis shop to open in town. No, I don't use cannabis, although I am glad that adult-use cannabis users in the Commonwealth are now able to easily and legally buy a tested product, not tainted with other substances, just as since the end of Prohibition, we can now buy alcoholic beverages of known origin rather than potentially lethal moonshine or bathtub gin. My selfish reason is that since I moved to Acton in 1985, I have supported and often advocated for increased property taxes to fund schools and town services, and for major capital expenses such as building the expanded Memorial Library, the new public safety building, and the building renovation and expansion of the school buildings on the school's central campus. Over the past 33 years of my residence in Acton, whenever these issues come before town meeting, comments from the floor were inevitably made that we need to look into expanding the tax base to lessen the burden on homeowners. The opening of an adult-use cannabis shop in Acton will expand that tax base. How do I do this here? No? Can you get this one for me? Sorry, I'm technically challenged. The opening of an adult-use cannabis shop in Acton will expand that tax base. Acton can levy up to a 3% sales tax on adult non-medical sales. Mass Wellspring conservatively estimates their annual revenue with one competing shop in a neighboring town at $8.73 million, which would generate $262,000 a year in sales tax revenue for the town, or about the same revenue as from $13.5 million in real estate assessments. The town allows municipalities to also impose an additional 3% impact fee for up to 5 years, doubling the town's potential revenue. Contrary to misinformation floating around, note that there are currently no licensed dispensaries nor retail stores with pending licenses in neighboring towns. And as a point of reference, 250 clients a day, Acton Liquor Store has over 400 sales a day. No one seems to be complaining about that. Next fall, another special town meeting will be held to address the replacement of the Douglas School building along with either Gates or Conant, all three aging and increasingly obsolete elementary school buildings. Voters will decide whether to support a debt exclusion override to fund a much-needed but expensive project. The addition of a new fire station in North Acton is also being discussed. The potential revenue from an adult-use cannabis sales tax of $500,000 or more a year will help to reduce the tax burden on property owners now and into the future. We can't afford to leave this money on the table. Reject the proposed ban put forth in Article 1 tonight. Vote no so that Acton is able to take advantage of this unique opportunity to finally expand the tax base. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will hear from the Finance Committee. Mr. Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. President Harry Truman, when aggravated by getting conflicting advice from the same advisors, once quipped, "Give me a one-armed economist." I suspect that some members of town meeting will feel similarly about finance committees at the end of my comments. As a committee, we are at our most comfortable when the issues and considerations are financial, quantifiable, and comparable. We like to synthesize down to a clear calculation, a model of the issue before us. Let me share with you the calculations that we are staring at. The first question I would like to address, or the first equation I would like to address, is the case of Article 1 passing and full prohibition in Acton. Given that marijuana is legal statewide, there will be costs to the town. Training police on how to detect drugs driving, increased time for DWI protocols, and the booking process has been identified by our police department. Some number of EMS ambulance calls will occur. These costs will materialize because banning a shop in Acton does not equate to keeping marijuana out of the town. Revenue from a user tax will by definition be zero in this instance, or could even be seen as a negative number, as any Acton residents who choose to go to another town will be paying 20% over the black market price to be legal, representing a tax paid by our citizens, but captured by a different municipality. Lastly, there are intangible costs, which I will discuss in a minute, But for the sake of this calculation, this one equation, I will hold at 0. The result is a net negative number, but to be clear, that cost is already baked into the current operating assumptions by the professional staffs at police and fire. The second scenario, or calculation, is if a recreational pot shop is allowed to open in town. For the sake of argument, let's hold the first input, that of the fixed costs due to legalization, at the same value as in the first equation or scenario. The revenue number is no longer 0, but it is a forecast in a very large range. Is it $72,000 over 2 years, as called out during the pro argument? Or is it over $500,000 a year, as projected by a prospective business owner? The remaining inputs to review are intangible costs. Intangible costs are devilishly hard to quantify. Here are only a few of the intangible costs that we deliberated in our multiple meetings. On the one hand, is it possible we will need to hire another police officer to handle all the impaired drivers on our roads and/or another firefighter paramedic as calls go up? Yes, that is possible. On the other hand, the police have gone on record as saying they do not anticipate needing to hire any additional headcount. They've been asked 3 years in a row. And they were asked specifically about the addition of the allowing of a pot shop in town. It is also possible that any increase in impaired driving or increase in need for medical services could occur without a shop even being in our town, as residents can purchase from neighboring towns. On the one hand, some believe it is possible that the increased convenience of a close proximity shop will increase the number of residents who will choose to use marijuana, and a shop in town will mean that children will have easier access. On the other hand, the existence of a shop does not compel anyone to become a customer, and the risk of losing a lucrative license is significantly higher than the profit to be gained by selling to any underage individual. On the one hand, is it possible that property values will be materially impacted by a stigma around a town allowing marijuana? Many people believe that that is so. On the other hand, it is also possible that enough towns will have shops so as to minimize the stigma to any one town. It is also possible that the existence of a shop in town does not impact the preeminent reason new families move to our town, namely the quality of education afforded by our school district, and no long-term negative impact will be borne on house values. In summary, there are costs associated to legalized marijuana that impact Acton. We will have to pay them whether we have a dispensary in town or not. The range of projected revenue is either totally inadequate, as it does not cover the cost of even one additional officer or paramedic should the need arise, or it is a budgetary boon that covers the salary and benefits of approximately 7 officers or paramedics. Real estate listings for houses in Acton will either bear an invisible scarlet letter that will harm every property owner in town, or the exercise of someone's private legal right in the Commonwealth will become normalized and commonplace, and a recreational shop in town will carry no more stigma than a liquor store or a lottery outlet. With such large variances in inputs, a majority of members felt that they did not have quantifiable facts to make a purely financial recommendation to the town. Mr. Moderator, it is my responsibility to report to town meeting that by a vote of 4-3 with 2 members absent, the Finance Committee is making no recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. I will now open it up to debate. Since we are operating out of 2 rooms, and we want to hear from folks in each room, while Mr. Cole was speaking, I did a little math based on how many people I am told are in the gym, which is about 175. There's about 650 or maybe more than that in this room. So what we will do is try to divide it up somewhat proportionately, and to make it a little bit easier for the audio and visual going back and forth, what we will do is I will first take 8 comments, so in other words 2 from each microphone, presumably here we have 4 microphones set up. And then we will switch over to the gym, and Ms. Berry will take comments from 3 people in the gymnasium, and then we will return here to the auditorium. And of course, we will hopefully hear someone call the question at some point when the debate becomes repetitious or when no one is standing. So I would ask for people here in the auditorium to approach microphones that wish to speak and address town meeting. And I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
I'm Charles Cadillac at Borreview Road. First of all, I think it may be just useful to tell the audience what even the high end of the potential revenue represents in terms of the total town budget or total town revenue, which is just under $100 million. Whether or not there is money to be made, I think, to me, is irrelevant. What struck me as the most objectionable of the potential sales of marijuana, whether it's in Acton or elsewhere, although we only get to control Acton, is that it comes in such wonderful packaging, such as candy, cookies, brownies, things that cigarettes don't come that way, alcohol doesn't come that way. Why is it being sold that way, if not to increase the potential customer base, especially children? They may not obviously be buying it directly, but you know, I just heard from my son who lives in New Hampshire that they are having problems with dogs having somehow found their way to ingest some not so obvious marijuana-laced products. Do we want our children doing that? No, it's not a question of money. It's a question of simply not validating something which inherently, at least a lot of us think, is a bad thing, and we don't know enough about the long-term effects. Well, let's not be the first ones to find out that we were wrong. So please vote yes. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Hi, I'm Miles Fidelman. I live at 531 Old Stone Brook. First of all, I'm going to be right up front. I'm 64 years old. I've smoked marijuana for 50 years, on and off. Big deal. And personally, I would just as soon purchase it legally and conveniently from a location in town where the tax revenue comes to us. I believe there are applicants in Hudson and a couple of other nearby towns. That's just absurd to have to drive there. Should be just as easy as going to Colonial Liquors and buying a 6-pack or a bottle of scotch. The second comment I'd like to make is that voting yes really is a subversion of the will of the majority. I went back and I checked. 6,641 people voted in favor of question 4 to legalize marijuana. 55-25 voted for Article 1, which was less than the people who voted against legalization in the first place. So, I mean, clearly the majority of Acton voters are in favor of legalization. And so I figure, vote no, let's get on with it. Why is this dragging on? Why is it a big deal?
I recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Yes, Dave Lunger at Wampanoag Drive. I have a few points to make on the revenue expected. Mass Wellsprings numbers are way, way too optimistic. They are based on only 1 or possibly 2 competitors near Acton. However, we now know that to expect 2 shops in Littleton and 2 more in Maynard. So rather than revenue of $8.7 million with one competitor, or 5.2 million with two competitors that they point out, Mass Wellspring is most likely to wind up with only $3 million in annual revenue. This means local sales taxes to Acton of only $94,000 per year, which is more reasonably in line with the Department of Public Health suburb estimate of $72,000. So let's round up and say Acton receives $100,000 a year. This assumes no decrease in prices as more stores open, creating significant competition to our lone store in Acton. $100,000 is a mere 1/10% of the Acton school and town combined budget. And this assumes we have no incremental costs associated with DUI, increased crime, local regulatory requirements, which really does not seem to be a reasonable consumption. There are regulatory requirements imposed on towns with pot shops. Has our town figured out who is going to fulfill these requirements and how much more it will cost? Will we need to hire more cops and EMTs? Have our town departments budgeted these likely expenditures for 2019? Will they do so in 2020? Guess what? Amherst officials did think about this and planned on an additional $550,000 to their 2018 budget to hire more first responders. This doesn't even include the additional monies by the UMass Police Department. So it's almost inconceivable that these additional costs will be covered by a mere $100,000. An Acton pot shop is much more likely to be a net drain on the budget. The potential of receiving $100,000 is not worth assuming the risk of all these unquantified expenditures that comes bundled with an Acton pot shop. Please vote yes on 1 and 4. Thanks.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Nijan Datar, Wintliff Drive. Basically, this vote for prohibition is an unreasonable restriction on what is a legal product. I mean, right now you have 2 licenses that have been granted. I hear there are 4 others in the works. So let's say there are 6 licenses. Why should those 6 business owners be the only ones able to tap this highly lucrative new market? I mean, why can't other enterprising business persons offer a better product, better service, and use, and make money in this market? I mean, some of us, get upset when you have big businesses, they get in bed with the government and regulators, and they put pretty onerous restrictions on new startups. They raise the barriers to entry so that, by adding new licenses and regulations and things like that. Right here, we the voters are pretty much doing the work of the current incumbent 6 stores, for example, by essentially raising the barriers to entry of their competition so that they get to make a lot more money. I don't know what the market is, but it's pretty high. It reminds me of a similar situation in the recent past. We had the Boston taxi cartel. You had the taxi owners in bed with City Hall limiting the number of medallions that anybody could have, so that a poor guy who wanted to get a taxi had to pay up to $400,000 just to ply one. I mean, this scam could have gone on forever until technology through Uber and Lyft drove a stake in the heart. So we need to get the black, and so that also created a black market in taxis. To remove the black market, we need 2 things. One is to remove the consumption by legalization. We've done that. But on the production side, we need to make sure that people can offer this product at a market clearing price. If you put so many restrictions on a small number of businesses, they cannot produce this product at a market clearing price. And so the black market will get in, and you're not going to do it. So we've done the consumption part through legalization. We need to have a competitive industry and get the criminal gangs out of this business. So please vote no on this.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Hi, my name is Rachel Rodman. We live on Pope Road. We moved from Colorado about 1.5 years ago. It is imperative to understand that a local legal recreational shop will fuel the black market. There's a great deal of solid data about this. According to Canada Broadcasting Corporation, the primary reasons are loyalty to a previous dealer, access and availability, and price. The cost of legal marijuana is higher. In Acton, it will be up to 60% more expensive than illegal marijuana, not just due to taxes, but the overhead of running a cash business, rent, employees, etc. Oregon State estimate that only 30% of the marijuana consumed in Oregon is legal, according to USA Today. Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Unit has reported an increase of illegal marijuana seizures 1,000% since legalization. Another indicator that the Drug Enforcement Agency uses indicating the health of the black market is cultivation on public lands. In the 5 years since legalization in Colorado, growing on public lands has increased 73%. One more obvious factor fueling the black market is the lack of legalization in neighboring states. Colorado was sued by several neighboring states for lack of control and fueling the black market for marijuana in their states, again, according to USA Today. Because we aren't sure how Acton will address the black market, why don't we wait and see how all this plays out with the stores that are opening in neighboring towns? This is a very well-documented and researched subject. I urge you all to research it quickly before you vote, and then vote yes on Article 1.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Jonathan Chinitz. I live at 3 Wingate Lane. I would like to speak in opposition to this article. Some consider marijuana a dangerous drug. Others claim it hurts society and is a bad influence on our kids. Some even equate it to cigarettes from an addiction standpoint. Here are the facts as I know them. Nearly half of Americans say they have tried marijuana at least once in their life, present party included. With more people lighting up than ever, you would think that fatality rates from overdoses of marijuana would be rising. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which collects data on a range of other substances, both legal and illicit, as well as the Drug Enforcement Administration, the number of overdoses is 0. By comparison, nearly 1 in 5 deaths in the United States can be attributed to smoking tobacco. According to the same Centers for Disease Control, 443,000 people die from diseases related to smoking each year. Yet there is no prohibition on purchasing or consuming cigarettes in Acton. What about alcohol? A large review published in August 2018 in the medical journal The Lancet found that among people ages 15 to 49, alcohol use was the leading health risk factor across the globe in 2016. Alcohol is strongly linked with several types of cancer. Marijuana is not. Yet there is no prohibition on purchasing or consuming alcohol in Acton. Many often cite Colorado as the marijuana state. Marijuana, in fact, plays a significant role in Colorado's culture and economy. In 2015, Colorado collected nearly $1 billion in revenue from legal marijuana sales, of which more than $35 million was earmarked for school construction projects. What about our kids, you ask? A 2015 Healthy Kids Colorado survey found that 63% of middle and high school students said they have never used marijuana. The marijuana finding is the second time the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, which is conducted every other year, has found flat pot use among Colorado teens despite the post-legalization boom in marijuana commercialization. The voters of Massachusetts have spoken. We should do our part in regulating the sale and use of marijuana in our town. I urge my fellow citizens to vote no on this article. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Hi, my name is Matt Onken, and I live at 2 Hazelnut. Where are we as a community? Are we seriously asking ourselves whether or not we want to have a pot shop here in Acton? Really? Are we really seriously considering this with a documented increase in crime, traffic, and limited tax revenue? But we're willing here to say no to Panera Bread? People wanted to have Panera Bread in our town, and we said no. We just talked about having an expanded tax base. Isn't that a great opportunity to have a tax base increase, is getting Panera Bread? No. Are we really willing to have the increase in ER visits to go along with the increase of the crime and the traffic, but we're not willing to have drive-thrus at our McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts? Does that make sense? Didn't we say no to drive-thrus because of the environmental impact, because of idling cars? Well, think about all the traffic that's going to be coming through. If we look at those numbers at 250 people and you start doing the math, just even 300 days, that's 75,000 people going through these places, going through the streets of Acton now. Where's the environmental impact for that? Shh, ma'am. Are we willing to have the pipe dream of tax revenue, which I think we've already kind of seen there's lots of variations here? Willing to have that massive increase of traffic that's happened in other cities. You guys look at the news recently where they talk, was it Leicester, where they have the backup of lines of traffic all over the place? Are we willing to have that? And yet we're not willing to invest in being able to put new crosswalk signs or something to protect our kids that are walking across the street. Where are our priorities? What message are we willing to send about our community? That we're willing to compromise our values for the almighty dollar? Sure, let's get some more tax revenue in here. Absolutely. That we're willing to sacrifice our kids' safety for the almighty dollar. That we're willing to have a pot store more than a Panera Bread. I think it's time for some real soul searching here. I don't want to accept this blood money. I've done my soul searching. I'll be voting yes for the ban, for all articles to ban recreational marijuana in Acton, and I urge you to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2. Please, no applause. No applause, please, while we're having debate. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Danny Factor, 11 Davis Road, and I'm speaking today as a representative of the Acton Commission on Disabilities. Our commission consists of members that are appointed by the town, and our mission is to advocate on behalf of individuals in Acton who have physical and mental health disabilities and to advance their inclusion and safety in town. Earlier this month, the Acton Commission on Disabilities voted as to whether they support or not this ballot measure. Of our 5 members, 3 voted against the ban, 1 voted in favor of the ban, and 1 member abstained. Overall, then, our commission supports voting no on this ballot measure. The main reason cited by our commission members to oppose the ban was that regulated cannabis is safer for all than the status quo. Many people with disabilities, whether owning prescriptions or not, particularly benefit from cannabis for many kinds of physical and mental health ailments. A majority of our members feel that we owe it to our community to ensure that the cannabis used in Acton is as safe as possible and see a no vote as a vote supporting highly regulated cannabis and a vote for safety. We also want to reiterate that this was not a unanimous vote. One of our members did not feel that the Commission on Disabilities should take this position because the matter was not disability related. Another member of our commission abstained without comment, but overall, mainly for the safety reasons stated, a majority of the members of our commission support a vote of no on this ban.
Thank you. We will now move over to the gymnasium. We've heard from 8 speakers here in the auditorium. Madam Assistant Moderator Berry, have you got people waiting to speak, I suspect?
They're not waiting yet. Are there speakers? Yes, we have some approaching. So okay. I will remind you, please introduce yourself and you will have 2 minutes. Thank you.
My name is James Engel. I've smoked marijuana. My daughter has smoked it for medical reasons. I want to emphasize that we are voting on an article for a ban that, it is my understanding, is temporary. It's not without limit of time. It lasts until mid-2020. Is that correct?
I assume that's a question?
Yes.
Which, Ms. Green, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to turn that over to
This ban would be, is not temporary. It would be permanent until the town overturned it by voting another bylaw. So this is not a temporary ban.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other people wishing to address the article? We have another speaker.
Hi, I'm Nidhi Lal, and I'm from 19 Canterbury Hill Road. I am a physician. I have several patients who use marijuana, but I also have little children. And I wanted to talk about the Massachusetts Medical Society position on marijuana. The Mass Special Senate Committee on Marijuana determined the following conclusions: that youth access and youth perception that marijuana is safe increases even when there are strong safeguards in place. Edibles, which are the fastest growing segment of the marijuana market, are particularly challenging for public health and safety. The high potency of today's marijuana products increases the risk of harmful health consequences and addiction, and we know that. The black market for marijuana is likely to continue after legalization, so it does not stop. And tax revenues and fees may fall short of covering the full public and social costs, including regulation, enforcement, public health and safety, and substance abuse treatment. It is a very, very high cost that is needed, and it will be borne by the individual as well as the town. I would also like to see if I can call the question.
Now, unfortunately, once you have started making remarks, you cannot also call the question. That's not fair to other speakers. So unfortunately, that is not a legal move.
We do have one more speaker here. Come ahead, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Silman K. Lau. What I'm really worried about is about 4 questions about the same topic. But to me, it's really not even about the access. Even if you vote yes or no to all articles, it doesn't mean that marijuana will disappear from our community, which that means whoever has it right now can go make some brownies and give it to underage children. Then that is why if you open additional obtain the substance, the marijuana, the only consequences would be A, the person who bought it consumed it, or B, it will be taken away by other individuals who would then make it into a black market or make it into free cookies and brownies and can harm anyone of age or underage. And for that reason, I really urge you to or confirm your belief to vote yes on Article 1 and all articles that is against marijuana use in the town of Acton. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. We will continue with the speaker at microphone number 3.
Hi, my name is Linda Vieira on Great Elm Way. My husband and I are both in our 60s and we do not have children. We moved here for the same reasons families move here: the good schools, the low crime rate, the great library, and the quiet streets. There are a lot of older people who are looking for exactly this kind of community, but they will be dramatically less inclined to move here if there are recreational marijuana stores in town. In fact, realtors have started to market properties saying that this property is in an opt-out town, and Acton, if they vote against the ban, then we would be in that category, and properties would not be as desirable in this town. In addition, I'd like to point out that we are not just voting on having a retail marijuana store in Acton. We are also voting on having manufacturing plants, farming cultivation sites, and testing facilities. My understanding is that there would be no limit to the number of manufacturing plants, farming cultivation sites, and testing facilities that Acton could have. In November, the majority of Acton voters said yes to a ban on marijuana businesses. If Articles 1 through 4 do not pass, this will be a divisive issue that the Board of Selectmen, the police, and town officials will have to deal with. In fact, everyone in town will have to deal with the upheaval and the negative impacts that have already been cited that bringing marijuana to Acton will create. Please vote yes on Articles 1 through 4. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Well, there it is. Thank you. Greg Hutchins, Parker Street. Dr. Rodman and others have argued that legalization will lead to an increase in traffic fatalities. Public safety experts continue to point to distracted driving, a lack of seatbelt use, and speeding as their predominant concerns. Marijuana use is not on the list. Let's talk about the data. A 2017 study in the American Journal of Public Health compared crash fatality rates in Colorado and Washington to those of 8 other non-legal states from 2009 to 2015. Pre-legalization rates were similar across all 10 states, as were post-legalization rates. In other words, there was no increase seen. The paper reached the conclusion that, quote, 3 years after recreational marijuana legalization, changes in motor vehicle crash fatality rates for Washington and Colorado were not statistically different from those in similar states without recreational marijuana legalization. The increase in traffic deaths Dr. Rodman cites in one of his slides is scientifically worthless. Here's why. Causality and culpability in those crashes was neither determined nor inferred in the study, and it explicitly says so. In 2013, the year legalization took effect, Colorado changed its testing protocols in a way that guaranteed the raw data would show an increase in marijuana usage rates. It began drug testing a large population of drivers in fatal crashes that it had not previously tested, specifically those with a blood alcohol content of 0.08 or above. To repeat that, the state began testing a group of people it had not previously tested, and those people were the ones already found to be driving under the influence of alcohol to a degree that they were considered legally impaired. No one should be surprised that the number of those found with THC in their systems increased. The surprise would have been if they found no change. A study published by the National Bureau of Economic Research in March of this year analyzed the rates of drivers found with THC in their systems after fatal car crashes between 2013 and 2016. The study then compared the patterns of THC-positive drivers in Colorado and Washington during that time period to those in other states. The authors wrote in their summary, quote, "We find the synthetic control groups saw similar changes in marijuana-related, alcohol-related, and overall traffic fatality rates despite not legalizing recreational marijuana." Please vote no. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Hi, I'm Bill Beebe. I live in 11 Longmeadow Way in Bellows Farms. I love living in Acton. I've never lived any place as long as I've lived here, almost 20 years. I urge you to strongly consider voting yes, and the reason is because what I consider to be Acton's crown jewel among the many nice things in Acton is our school systems. The AB systems is just phenomenal. What it takes to make a good school system is enough money to get good teachers and have good facilities, and to have a system that attracts parents that are going to bring kids in that are serious about education, serious about learning. Now, what is the effect of AB quality on our ability to draw people into this town? I think it's very tremendous, because we really don't have much else to draw people in with. We don't have much else to sell. It's our schools, and you look at towns around that are embracing right now pot, and the ones that seem to be embracing pot are not in the position where they have to sell their schools. They have to depend on their schools as the draw to get people to come into the town. We have expensive taxes, we have expensive houses, and a lot of people come here for the schools. I was allowed to speak at a school committee meeting a month or so ago when they had a public input allowed, and I made these points, and then I sat down, you know, and I said, well, okay, maybe nobody else agrees with me. Three men in their 30s, obviously fathers, each one in turn came up and said, I've just been in Acton a little while. If there had been a pot shot in Acton, I would not have even looked in Acton as a place to live. Each one of them said that. And after those three said what they had to say and sat down, I thought the school committee was pretty quiet for a while. So I am concerned about what the effect of a pot shop in town, recreational pot, could do to our draw for new residents coming in. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Thank you. I am Marcia Lewin Berlin. I live on Half Moon Hill. I have been an Acton resident for over 23 years. I have brought up 3 kids in this town who are now all adults, and I am an oncology and hospice social worker. So what I have to say has to do with being a medical professional. As a medical professional, I support the use of medical-grade cannabis. And as a parent, I support medical-grade cannabis for anyone who needs it for medical purposes or for recreational use. I have seen loved ones and patients suffer from debilitating nausea, unable to eat or sleep. They use their limited energy to go to treatment and then recuperate from treatment. They experience skin rashes, anxiety, depression, inability to focus. They would benefit from cannabis, and we do have a medical store in town, but they don't have the energy to find a certified doctor to get a card, or the energy to drive to one. They can't necessarily afford the $250 needed to get the initial card, and more money every year to keep that card current. They are too beat up by cancer to try, and they give up. Having a nearby adult use cannabis store provides easy accessibility for all people who can benefit from the healing properties of cannabis. This is for people who are
I think the microphone's still on. Oh, now it's off.
It's not. Nope.
There you go.
Oh, here we are. I'm almost done anyway. This is for people who are eligible for a card but don't have the money or energy to get one. This is also for anyone who has gastric reflux, insomnia, arthritis, anxiety, or depression. These are all things that are helped by targeted cannabis use. I know people who don't understand how cannabis works are afraid. My experience tells me that the value of this plant cannot be underestimated. I urge you to vote no on this measure intended to stop accessibility for tested medical-grade cannabis. Vote no so our suffering neighbors, friends, and family have access to this valuable medical resource. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
My name is Bill Mullen, 9 Wilson Lane. I move the previous question.
The question has been, the previous question has been moved. I did not hear a second. Aha. A little prompting is helpful once in a while, I guess. Before we vote on this, and before I accept this motion, I'm just curious, a show of hands of people who have not yet made up their minds on this question.
Here. Is there anyone here?
We will proceed to vote on the motion to cut off debate. This motion requires a 2/3. However, given what I just saw, we may try this by a voice vote, perhaps. No, this requires 2/3 to cut off debate. To cut off debate requires a 2/3. Please, quiet. All those in favor of the motion to cut off debate, please say aye. Aye. Whew. Any opposed? How about in the gymnasium?
It was unanimous.
Okay. The motion to cut off debate has passed. We will now turn to vote on the motion under Article 1. This requires a simple majority to pass. I do think it's important to remind everyone that, as Ms. Green said, a yes vote on this means you're in favor of a ban. A no vote means you are not in favor of a ban. I would ask at least everyone in the auditorium to turn on their clickers by gently pressing the orange button. Is everyone ready? We will put 20 seconds up, and I will call on the section here on my right to please vote. The voting window is open. The voting window is closed. I will now move to the folks in the center section of the auditorium. The voting window is now open. Please vote. Let's stop the timer, please. We all set? Okay. We'll finish the timer, please. You do not need to revote. Okay. The voting window is closed. We'll now move to the left-hand section. Voting window is now open. Please vote. Oh, we have one question. Can we please stop the voting window, the timer? We all set? Okay, let's resume the timer. The voting window is now closed. We'll move to the gymnasium.
We have voted.
Okay.
Wait.
We okay in there?
Just take a pause. I didn't understand that question. Oh, there are some folks who did not vote, so my question.
Believe you can go ahead and let them vote now, is that correct?
All right, so let's, wait, where's my guides? Mr. Moderator, the
yes.
question, sorry about this, the question is, some people missed the call to vote. So, should we all just vote again to incorporate those votes? Cancel out the original vote?
We're all set in the auditorium. I'm going to ask our IT expert here. Did they actually close the vote in the gymnasium?
Yes, we had closed
the
the
vote.
vote.
Then you do need to have everyone re-vote in the gymnasium, not in the auditorium, just in the gymnasium.
So, in case you changed your mind. So once again, power up your clicker. A means yes. E, as in everyone, means no. Right now, vote. Yeah. It is open. The voting is open. Turn off and turn back on if you're getting closed. Are people able to vote? Has everyone who wishes to vote voted? Not yet, okay.
Maybe the Patriots really won't make the Super Bowl.
Are we all set now then? All right, voting is closed.
Thank you. We should have the result shortly. Excuse me, no. That is the practice motion. That is not the result. That is the practice motion. Please. That was not the result, so please do not leave. There is the result. The motion on under Article 1 passes 76% to 24%, 811 yes, 261 no. We will now move to Article 2. Please, may I have order? Please. We are now moving to Article 2. I believe, no, that is not the correct motion. That is not the correct motion. The motion, I will read the motion, and I believe it's Ms. Adachi's motion. Is it not? Or does it matter? Ms. Green, you want to handle this one too? Okay. Ms. Green moves that the town take no action under Article 2. Do I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Green, do you want to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, just briefly, now that Article 1 has passed, meaning that the general bylaw banning recreational marijuana is in effect, then the Board of Selectmen believes that there is no need for zoning related to recreational marijuana, and so we unanimously recommend taking no action on this article.
Does the FinCom have a recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, the FinCom is unanimous to do nothing on this article.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak to this motion? I see one person standing. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think in spite of the fact that we just voted the ban, we should also vote the zoning. Very quickly, the reason is the ban is reversible. Anytime anybody wants to bring up a motion under an article in a future town meeting to reverse this, they can, and they probably will try. Zoning is also reversible, but it's a 2/3 vote. I see no reason to not have the zoning in place as well as the ban. Therefore, I urge you to vote against the motion to take no action and go back to the original motion and pass the zoning.
Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Yes, hello. This is Greg Rockman. I'm from Pope Road. I'd like to issue a point not related specifically to this motion, but the point that the...
excuse me, sir,
yes.
Your comments need to be directed at the motion.
All right. It was for the ratios. They're the same. The vote came out the same, so I take issue with the likelihood that it was the same as the practice vote. Thank you.
Is there anyone standing in the gymnasium to speak? Ms. Berry?
No speakers here.
I see no one else standing, so we will vote. I believe, I'm just checking, I believe that the motion to take no action is a simple majority. Yes. So this takes a simple majority. If it were a zoning vote, it would require 2/3, but this is a simple majority to take no action. But I think we'll do this electronically. I know that will probably produce a few groans, but just to be on the safe side, I think we should do this. So I would ask that you turn on your clickers again, please. And we will get the voting window open.
Voting window is open here. This is to take...
This is a motion to take no action. A vote yes would mean to take no action. A vote no would presumably open the question up. So those on the right-hand side in the auditorium, the voting window is now open. Please vote. A is for yes, E is for no. Voting window is now closed. We'll go to the center section. The voting window is now open. Voting window is now closed. We'll move to the left-hand section. The voting window is open. Please vote. And the voting window is closed. Madam Assistant Moderator, I believe I heard you already take the votes in the gymnasium. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. We will see the vote tally in 1 second or 2. And the motion to take no action carries 84% to 16%. We will now move to Article 3. Again, the motion here is that Ms. Green moves that the town take no action. Is there a point of order? Yes, sir. You may make a motion to reconsider, yes.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to reconsider question 1. There was a lot of grumbling about the vote count.
Is there a second to the motion for reconsideration? Okay, no. There's a motion has been made and seconded. We have a specific town bylaw that regulates motions for reconsideration. So let me explain the town bylaw. The town bylaw requires that a motion for reconsideration, and I will just check with town council, but I believe this is correct. A motion for reconsideration on the same night that the vote was taken, which would be tonight, requires a 2/3 majority to pass. If it were taken on subsequent night, there are several other contingencies which we don't need to get into. So there has been a motion for reconsideration of the vote under Article 1. The motion under Article 1 has been made. That motion is in fact a debatable motion. If the originating motion was also debatable, which it was, we heard quite a bit of debate. So therefore, that motion for reconsideration is now on the table. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to that motion for reconsideration? Ms. Green?
I don't wish to speak to it except to say that the Board of Selectmen quickly caucused and we unanimously do not support reconsidering the motion.
Thank you. I don't believe the Finance Committee doesn't look like they wish to comment. So I will recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Thank you. I just want to say that with the voting difficulties in the gymnasium and a lot of the kind of grumbling in here, if people feel that secure that their vote will still carry, what difference does it make if we take a moment to feel that everybody has been served and every voice has been heard? This is a democracy.
No, please, please. No. We owe all speakers due respect and civility, please. Recognize the speaker at microphone number 3.
I'm sorry, some people have probably already left, so I think the first vote should count unless there is significant evidence that there was technical difficulties with the first vote.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Hi, Elizabeth Muff on Windermere Drive. Most people, I agree, have left, and I just don't understand if it was a vote and it was taken. I've been in town since 1985. We used to vote by tickets. I haven't been to a town meeting, I hate to say, in many years. This is so technical compared to 1985. I can't even believe it. I mean, you're reading what I'm saying. So by doing this, we had a test that went twice. There shouldn't have been any problem with that. If we did not do any tests, then I would say, okay, we don't know how to do this. We did 2 tests, and it was agreed upon that we all knew what we were doing. I think the vote should stay. Thank you.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 1.
Yes, Sharon Burka, 3 Shady Lane in Acton, and as you can see from the empty seats, many people have left, especially those people with small children. I think it would be very unfair to retake a vote, just knowing that so many people have had to leave to take care of their children.
Recognize the speaker at microphone number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. With all due respect.
Could you please identify yourself?
Jerry Polano, 5 Vanderbilt Road, Acton. With all due respect, I think you confused the matter when you called to question and said, it looks like we don't even need the clickers. And at that point, you said, maybe we'll just take a hand vote. And then after we took the hand vote, we went to the ballot, to the article, and then we started voting on the article. But personally, to me, it wasn't all that clear that we were voting on the article, and I wonder how many thought they were voting for something else. I think we should vote again. Thank you.
I have one more person, 2 more people standing. I recognize the speaker at microphone number 2.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move the previous question.
Motion to cut off debate has been made and seconded. That is not debatable. All those in favor of the motion to cut off debate, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion to cut off debate carries. We will now vote electronically. This is a motion for reconsideration This is simply the motion to reconsider the vote that had been previously taken under Article 1. This does, in fact, require a 2/3 majority. So we will do this electronically. Does everyone have their clickers? I'm sorry. If someone has a point of order, otherwise we're going to proceed with business. What is the point of order? Who has a point of order? Pardon? I will do that. I will do that when we're ready to vote. Thank you. Okay. What is your point of order?
I think there's confusion as to what we're voting on. I think it should be made clear that the vote is to basically restart the discussion on Article 1, not to vote on Article 1.
I will make that clear. So, let's try this again. We have before us on the table a motion, or on the floor, excuse me, a motion which is simply to take the action to reconsider the vote taken under Article 1. We are not at the moment revoting Article number 1. We are simply deciding whether we want to reopen the debate and the vote under Article 1. So that a yes vote, let me finish, please, so that a yes vote for this motion would in fact reopen the discussion and reopen the debate under Article 1. A no vote would defeat the motion for reconsideration, and then we would move on to Article 3. And I would also note that there is only one motion for reconsideration allowed. So, is that clear to everyone? Thank you. I will now ask you to turn your clickers on. This requires a 2/3 to pass. And I would ask folks on the right-hand section, do we have the voting window? The voting window is about to be opened. Again, a yes vote means you want to reconsider the vote taken under Article 1. A no vote means you do not want to reconsider the vote. The voting window is now open for the right-hand section. We have some problems up top. Please stop the timer. Okay, we're all set. Please resume the timer. The voting window is closed. I'll turn to the center portion of the auditorium. The voting window is open. And the voting window is closed. We'll turn to the left-hand section. Oh, I'm sorry. We're all set. Okay, the voting window now for the left-hand section is open. Please vote. And the voting window is now closed. You have voted in the gymnasium.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion for reconsideration has failed. We will now move to Article 3. Ms. Green moves that the town take no action. Do I have a second? Ms. Green, the motion has been made and seconded. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As I mentioned earlier, this motion and article would deal with taxing recreational marijuana facilities. As we have now put in place the ban, we believe that this article is moot, and therefore the board recommends taking no action.
Thank you. The Finance Committee have any comments?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends no action taken on this article.
Thank you. Town meeting members, does anyone wish to speak to this motion to take no action? I see no one standing here. Is there anyone in the gymnasium standing?
No, there isn't.
Then we will vote. I think we'll try this one by voice. All those in favor of the motion that the town take no action, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion certainly carries here. This is just a majority. In the gymnasium?
Yes, nearly unanimous.
Motion carries. We move to Article 4. Article 4 is to amend the zoning bylaw, the extension of the marijuana establishment temporary moratorium. Excuse me. The motion is, Ms. Green moves that the town amend the zoning bylaw as set forth in the article. Do I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Green, to your motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. So as I mentioned earlier this evening, Article 4 would extend the town's temporary moratorium on marijuana establishments. At a special town meeting in December of last year, the town voted to adopt a temporary moratorium on the siting of non-medical marijuana establishments using our zoning powers. This moratorium is set to expire on December 31st of this year. By approving Article 1, the town has now adopted a general bylaw prohibiting all recreational marijuana establishments in Acton. That bylaw will not go into effect until the Attorney General reviews and approves it. Extending the zoning moratorium, which goes into effect upon the vote of town meeting, would provide time for that review in case it extends beyond the end of this year. The way the article is written, the moratorium is no longer in effect when the Attorney General approves the general bylaw ban. If, for some reason, the Attorney General does not approve the bylaw, then the moratorium will remain in effect until June 30th, 2019, or until the town adopts a zoning bylaw regulating the sale of recreational marijuana. This would give the town time to adopt zoning regulations or to adopt a ban that meets the Attorney General's approval. We do not anticipate that the Attorney General will disapprove of the general bylaw ban, but this gives the town 6 months to address the issue if she does. To provide the town this flexibility and protection while the general bylaw ban is under review, the Board of Selectmen unanimously recommends this article. Thank you.
And the Finance Committee?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends this article.
Thank you. I will open it up for debate among town meeting members. I see no one standing. Is there anyone standing in the gymnasium?
No, there is not.
Then we will vote. As you see, this requires a 2/3 vote, so we will vote once again electronically. You may turn your clickers on, please. And if you are ready to vote, I will call on the section here on the right to please go ahead and vote. The voting window is open. And the voting window is closed. I'll now turn to the center portion of the auditorium. You may vote. The voting window is open.
There.
And the voting window is closed. We'll turn to the left-hand section. Please be ready to vote. The voting window is open.
Back there.
What happened? Excuse me, please, excuse me, we're still voting. I would really appreciate it if you'd remain in your seats while we finish voting, please. The voting window is closed, and the gymnasium...
Voting is still in progress.
Are you set in the gym?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. The motion carries. We have one more motion. Ms. Green,
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move to dissolve town meeting.
do I have a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thank you.